All right, Chris, I hesitate to call it your Super Bowl week or your Stanley Cup final Game 7 here, but this is a big sequence of events that all kind of leads up to the NHL Draft. And I know you and your team have put in a ton of work. How do you describe the human power that goes in year-round to get us to this week and ultimately this weekend?
Yeah, I think we start basically after last year's draft. We've already started prep work for this year. So there's U18s, there's selection camps, there's the Ivan Alinka that runs, a month from the draft is over, it's starting already for the next year. So it's a lot of work. And I think when you go through it, you're exhausted and you're trying to, kind of answer all the questions you're trying to do, but then all of a sudden it really sneaks up on you and it's here.
Right.
And we were talking about that as a group the other day that, it's the draft's in 4 days or whatever it is. So
feels like just yesterday you were taking Michael Misa.
Exactly. And it does. It literally, we were sitting and we were talking to those and then you go through that same process again. So, but we pride ourselves on how much work we do and we're ready and we're excited.
It's an interesting dynamic that the top picks, and obviously having a number 2 and a number 27 overall, everybody's going to focus on that, but you have a lot more picks after that. And while the focus might be up top, it's probably harder to make those later round picks. Is that accurate?
Yes and no, because later rounds you're waiting to see which player, who could possibly be there.
Right.
I will say, speaking from experience now, when you pick early in the draft, you open yourself up for a lot more criticism and a lot more chance to be wrong. And it's because, in theory, you're picking before everybody else does.
Right.
And so ultimately, there's much more probability that there's a player behind him that's going to be better.
Right.
And I think if you get caught up in doing that and you worry about that too much, it's a really difficult job because we're betting on 17, 18, 19-year-old kids. And we're trying to project them in the future. And so I think when you're picking high, you need to make sure that you are doing everything you possibly can to make sure that, that guy taking 2 or 3 spots behind him is a better player. So that brings a whole another different type of pressure. It brings excitement, but it also brings, you really have to think through things.
So the pressure is still there for a 2 or a 7th round pick.
Yes.
But it's just different is what you're saying.
It's different.
Yeah.
I think the one thing that is exciting about later picks in some ways is that it becomes, when they do hit and when they do become something that you hope.
A steal maybe.
A steal.
Yeah.
And I firmly believe that, yes, you need your first round picks to play and they need to help your team, but you also need to get a couple other players later in the draft every year, that 3 to 4 player mentality to fill your cupboards full.
Yeah.
And I think if you keep that mindset of, ultimately our goal is to draft, every single player we draft is going to play for the Sharks.
Right.
That's
the idea.
Unrealistic.
Yeah.
But if we can get enough of them and then we can continue to have assets and players that play, and usually they come from later rounds, and that's exciting.
Joe Pavelski was out there one day in a 7th round, and look what that turned into.
Exactly.
So if my math is correct here, 224 hockey players are going to be selected this weekend. I would think that you and the team here are extremely familiar now with maybe like 300 hockey players. Have you done diligence on as many of them as you can, as many as reasonably possible? How many do you really go over?
There was probably double that in terms of how many players we
400?
There's probably, I would have to look on what our stats, but I would say there'd be over 500 different player reports.
Wow.
And
okay.
I think so. If you look at, again, we have scouts all over the world. We have a great group that works incredibly hard, and guys in Sweden, Russia, Finland, that they go to all these different games and they watch all these kids. And I think that's what makes it really cool going back to the late round is there's excitement because those names that are being pushed or being put up late in the draft are coming from the area guys that know these kids inside and out and that have spent the time with them and know, because again, it takes a special type of kid to be drafted late and to persevere and overcome being drafted late because, there are things where being drafted higher kind of gives you that a little bit of an advantage. That's not here, not in what we do, but in terms of, 7th round picks versus 1st round picks, opportunity might not be the same sometimes. So when a guy does become that player and it's because of the diligence and the work that our area guys have done, that's a really good thing for our group and for the individual scout.
So on Friday, Toronto goes first, San Jose goes second. Let's just pause it right there. Does that mean that you and your team only need to have a plan A and a plan B, at least for that second overall pick?
No, I think we have plan alphabet. We have
all the letters.
We do. We, my biggest thing for our group is to make sure that Mike gets all the information he needs. And I think when we put our list together and we build this thing out, it has to be based off of best player available and where we have them as scouts. And so when we do that and we put our list together and we go forward with it, the biggest thing for me is here's all the information, let's make the best decision and go from there.
You have obviously your own employees as scouts, you've got central scouting, maybe even listening a little bit to what media pundits say. I mean, are you really taking and sourcing everybody's opinions to make your own, or are you only focusing on, hey, here's what we think and we're going to follow our lead?
I think that's a hard one because I think it'd be arrogant not to pay attention to what's around you. I learned that early on where I would say I'm comfortable with my opinion.
Yeah.
I go to games, I watch it, I'm able to form an opinion. But if
you trust that.
Yes.
Yeah.
But you need to be well aware of what the industry and where things are because it does matter.
Right.
And so, I think we just have to, I say for our group to be information gatherers and just gather as much information we can because I think the more information you can, whether it's, all good or it's all bad, we are going to get to a conclusion. So, we are focused on every single player that's on our list. We are going to put as much detail into number one on our list and then whoever.
Yeah. I look at recent early Sharks draft picks, and you got good players, but also really good kids in Mac and Will and Misa and Dickinson. So you can see the player stuff on the ice.
Yeah.
And I guess you also do a little bit of scouting to know the person, but how do you really get to make sure that you're drafting the right human being to fit in this room, this culture, this team, which now has an identity? How do you do that other part of it?
I think it starts with Mike, because I think Mike, has a standard of what and the type of people he wants in the organization,
right.
And that flows down to us. And so when the culture and it's set, then you kind of know what would fit and what doesn't. And most of us in the room, or all of us in the room, have played organized sports at some time.
Right.
Most of us have played hockey.
Right.
We understand what works and what doesn't.
Right.
We understand, I ask our guys the question all the time, would you want to play with him? And so if you think about that from a concept standpoint, did you want him to be an aligned mate? Or ask myself that all the time.
Says it all, right?
Right. When I'm watching a player, or do you want to be a teammate of his? And so I think we do, again, the combine dinners, we do every single one of our scouts meet with these kids, talk to their kids. We try and figure out stuff about their family. We talk to coaches going way back, years. Again, our job is, the on-ice part, a lot of ways, is the easiest part.
Yeah.
You go to a game, you watch a player, things stand out. Whether it's skating, whether it's size, whether it's hockey IQ, whether it's shooting a puck. Figuring out what makes a kid tick, figuring out how he's going to work in a new environment. When all this becomes, there's a lot of different things that go into it. And I think the more we can get to that and the more we can understand the human, the better off we can draft. And I do think, I'm glad you noticed it, because I personally, I think the kids that we have taken, they're really good people. And I always believe that hockey's still a people-based business.
Yeah.
And you can do amazing things with good people. And I think that's what Mike has started from the top, is competitive kids that care. And we're trying to do that.
The moment you would take me out to dinner is the moment I would disappoint you, by the way. You'd say, nope, don't want that guy.
You'd get a good dinner, though. Get a good dinner. We'd never tell you that right to your face. We'd let it go.
Totally worth it. Couple more things. So Toronto makes their pick. And again, you've said there's a whole alphabet for all the different plans you have. But what immediately happens when San Jose is on the clock inside the room? Is it calm? And you've been there before. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah.
So what will that be like this weekend when it goes from the number one pick is made to now it's San Jose's turn?
Yeah, I'd like to think it's a calm. Again, we're going to meet once we're out of here. Once I'm done here with you, we'll have our meetings all the rest of the week. I've been thinking about this probably since last year's draft ended in terms of how I put things together, and I know a lot of our group has too. So I think it's excitement. It's also, I would really like to think that I've not been panicked in those situations or been stressed because the work has been done.
Right.
And so I think if you are comfortable with the work and you feel good about it, then this should be really exciting.
Right.
And I think it's sometimes when you're in the moment and you move up and you're worried about, now you got to worry about all these different things that come along with it. But it's a really exciting day, an exciting weekend for the franchise.
It's like planning the wedding versus having the wedding.
Exactly.
Having the wedding is the fun part.
Exactly.
It takes years to figure out how this draft is going to go for the Sharks and every other team involved. Is that a little bit frustrating that there's not instant gratification every single year? And obviously, Mac has been an exception to that. But some players take time, and you may be proven right in all of the senses. It just may take 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and that's probably the hardest part of this job is you're doing something in theory that's 3 to 5 years away.
Right.
And I think if you, again, stay focused on what you're trying to do, and that is draft the best player available, nowhere in that sentence does it say under these time frames.
Right.
And I think if you can continue with that mindset of, hey, I get it, I understand what people think, I appreciate everybody else's opinion, but we understand what we're trying to do in here, and we don't, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, it's extremely nerve-wracking, and because, again, you don't ever really see until the picture's pretty foggy for a long time.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I think it's why you cut grass and you have a Zen garden, because it's something you can see that happens right away, right? And it's not an easy thing, and it's personally you can go back and you can think about every decision I've ever made in scouting going back to the time I first started.
Yeah.
And that will drive you insane.
Yeah.
You just need to focus on don't make the same mistake twice,
right,
and make sure you continue on the process of trying to get the best players for the Sharks.
Your instinct, does it tell you this could be a crazy Friday and Saturday? And not just for the Sharks. There's some volatility in the league. Some things might happen. Some trades, some moves in this draft.
Yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of trades already. I think anytime there's also new GMs in the league, there's new coaches.
Unknown. Right.
There's a lot of different things going on. I also think the cap coming. There's a whole bunch of. It's an exciting time to be a hockey fan.
Right.
Because I think there's obviously the post-cup kind of, and then it gets ramped up again, and I think a bunch of teams now, it's exciting to see what's going to happen.
I'll end it by saying good luck, but you don't need it.
Thank you so much.